Okay, and this is from AZ Merit Review number 1. An absolute value function has the following characteristics. It has a minimum value of 0. Can everybody put, this is, when they say minimum value, they're always referring to y values. So it has a minimum value of 0. It means it's not going to go below the x-axis because the x-axis has a y value of 0. It has an x-intercept of -2. So let's go to -2 and make a dot. Now, I know it's not going to go below the x-axis, and this is an x-intercept. That tells me that this absolute value function will be above this point. Okay, remember, absolute values are going to make a V shape. It has a y-intercept of 4. Remember that we could cut in half an absolute value function, and it's symmetrical like a parabola. But instead of making a U shape, a parabola U shape, we have a V shape. And we want to only graph this from -5 to +1. So first of all, let's figure out what is the slope. How do I get from this point up to here? I have to go up 4 and over 2. Well, 4 over 2 reduces to 2. So watch, I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I don't want to keep going because it says that I only want to go from 1 to -5. So this is where x is 1. And I make a closed dot here because of this symbol. We want to keep it equal to that value. And now I'm going to do the same going to the left. So I'm going to go to the left 1 and up 2, left 1 up 2. And I got to be careful here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I got to go one more. So this particular absolute value is only graphed on the domain where x's go from -5 to +1. Again, we include those. We have a closed dot at -5 and at 1. The y-intercept is 4. The x-intercept is -2. And the minimum, that means the y value, is 0. Thumbs up, thumbs down right now for that problem. Okay, with your partner talking, Sebastian, would you mind flipping around? Hector, would you mind flipping around and working with your partner? You're going to do 19. I'm going to give myself 30 seconds, and then I'll start doing it. But I want like you to do it, and then check your answer with mine, please. Ready? Begin. Okay, maximum value. This is referring to a y value, maximum y value of 3. So I know that it will hit some point at 3, and then that's going to be the maximum. So everything's going to be going below that. We have x-intercepts at 2 and 4. And we have, once again, a maximum value at y equals 3. Now, how did I choose this point? Because I know directly in between the two x-intercepts, it will be symmetrical. So what's directly in between these points? It just happens to be also x equals 3. So at this point, which is directly in between the two x-intercepts, I go up to the highest point, and I make a dot. Okay, let's check what is the slope. Going from left to right, you go down 3 over 1. So your slope is -3 over 1. All right, let's look here. We have a y-intercept of -6. And let's make sure that's following this. So down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1. Down 3 over 1. Okay, great. I also can see that we want to graph this from 0, x equals 0. Again, it closed out at 0 to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so 2 more. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And 1, 2, 3 over 1. I may have not provided you with enough time, but can you help me out? Do me a favor, thumbs up at this point if I understand this, I was able to get it. Thumbs down if I'm feeling really confused about this. Please hold your hands up high so I can see. Okay, majority of us are thumbs up. Some of us will need a couple extra problems like this to practice. Now, number 20 was not from the AZM Merit sample packet, but I think it's important we know how to do this. We learned this back in August. So I'm going to use the characteristics here. I'm going to graph it, and then I'm going to come up with an equation. So write an equation of the absolute value function with the following characteristics. So let's do this here together. Again, we have a maximum value of 4. So I'm going to go up to 4. I'm going to do it with a different color. I think it's, my personal opinion is it's easier to graph it, and then after you have a graph, we can write an equation. So we have a maximum value of 4. We have x-intercepts at 3 and at 1. So as I said on the film, when you were doing the last problem, and I was doing it quietly up here, I said once you have your x-intercepts, realize that your maximum or minimum point is going to occur directly in between them. So there's a distance of 4 in between this. So I'm going to find that midpoint, and I know that my maximum or minimum is going to fall along this dotted line. And in this particular problem, it says it's going to be your maximum, and it's going to occur at positive 4. That's a y value of 4. We have a y-intercept of 2. And that looks right. I have a straight line. So let's figure out what is the slope. So remember we always want to go from left to right. So you're going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So this has a slope of 2 over 1. So we could continue this 2 over 1, 2 over 1. And this doesn't have any constraints saying only graph in this domain. So how do we come up with this equation? Let's review what this looks like. So I'm going to start by putting little question marks here. There's 3 question marks we have to consider. As a reminder, this is your horizontal shift. It's always opposite of what you think. Here's your vertical shift. It's always the same as what you see on a graph. And then this is your slope. So for this problem, remember we look at the slope from left to right. From left to right, yes, I'm going up here and down. But think of this really quick. I want you to decide, would this be a negative 2 over 1 or should this be a positive 2 over 1? We're going to come back to that in a second. And then from the origin, I shift to the right 1 and up 4. So since I'm shifting to the right 1, it's going to be a negative 1. It's in the opposite direction. And your vertical shift to get up to the vertex is plus 4. Now, based on what you know, before you grab a calculator, how can we determine, should it be a negative 2 or a positive 2? Talk to your partner, 10 seconds, go. Think about parabolas. If this number out front is a positive, which way is the parabola opening? If it's negative, it's opening. So the easier way to do this, by the way, the easier way to do this is when you find the slope, always go from the vertex to the right. Vertex to the right, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. This is your equation. I need to go back with you. I did not completely read problems from yesterday, so please find problem number. Give me a second to find it myself. Please find problem number 10, 11, and 12. So what did I forget to do? Yesterday, good morning, Oscar. Grab a calculator, please. Yesterday, we only completed the explicit formula problems. We only completed those. So let's see if I have my answer key. Please take a look at yours in the meantime. It looks like I threw mine out. So I'm going to ask that just one person can volunteer to tell me what this was. Can anybody tell me what this was? A sub n equals, anybody?
Negative 7 over 3 plus 5 over 3 n.
Okay, and does it matter if the 5/3 n goes first or second? Makes no difference. Thank you. Okay, next one. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Negative 2.5 n plus 11.1 equals 18.
Got it? And your last one?
2.5 minus 0.5
Can somebody grab the phone for me really quick? Can somebody grab the phone for me, please? Thank you. Okay, so these are all, do me a favor, draw an arrow. These are all examples of explicit. Okay, now we're going to look at recursive. We're going to look at recursive next. So recursive looks a little different. Miss who? Okay, Purvis? Okay. So the next one we're going to look at is recursive. Now we often don't use recursive as often. So let's see if you remember this. A sub 1 equals, and I'm going to let you fill these in for each one of the following. Do that, please. And then I want you to talk with your partner. What do you think is going to be the next answer? How do we get, remember there's going to be two equations. Start with a sub 1. You can use your phones to look this up, to check, but we're going to say right now, working with the person next to you and the people around you, you have 30 seconds to figure out, how do I come up with the next part? Okay, you can look at your phone, you can look up at the general equation for recursive. Recursive formula, 30 more seconds. How do we correctly write it? A sub n minus 1 starts with all of them. And then what do we follow it with? Your difference. Well, what is your difference for this particular problem? Anybody want to go back and look? What's your difference? Well, we need to check to see, is she correct? We need to check to see, is she right? So here's what we're going to do. Let's look at these three and go, which one do you guys think looks the easiest to work with? 10, 11, or 12? Nobody? Okay, I think 11 may look the easiest. I would choose 11 or 12. So let's check real quick. Do you guys agree this is the first term in this sequence? Okay, so watch. We always have to assume that n is going to be greater than or equal, n is going to be greater than or equal to, and actually we're just going to say greater than 1. So your next number that we plug in is going to be 2. So when I plug in 2 here, 2 minus 1 is 1. And what is a sub 1? So on your calculator, plug in 8.6. And then I would like you to add to it a negative 2.5. And press enter. Do you get an answer of 6.5? You get what? 6.1. Or 6.1. Thank you. You get an answer of 6.1. Yes? Okay, let's try another one. Again, this is always assuming that your n is greater than 1. So let's try 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. A sub 1 is the answer of 2. Please take 2 and add negative 0.5. Then put it back into a fraction and tell me if you get an answer of 3/2. So this is going to be your D. This is your D, and this is your A sub 1. Make sure your partner understands, and then we're going to move ahead. Here's why this is important. Thank you. Here's why this is important. Which of the following is a recursive formula for the sequence below? So first of all, let's see what can we cancel out. So what's the first term in this sequence? So let's check. Do they all have -3? Anything that doesn't have -3, cancel out. Good test practice. Now the next thing is let's figure out that common difference. So to figure out the common difference, we're asking ourselves, how do we go from -3 to +2? So one way to do that is to take the second number, in this case it's 2, and subtract it from the first number. 2 negatives make a positive, and the answer is 5. Now we can make sure that works. -3 plus 5 is 2, yes. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12. So my difference maker is 5. And just like Jasmine shared with us last time, we take this portion and we're going to add to it the common difference. Which one has it adding to it the common difference? Option A. State the first number of the sequence, add to it the common difference. Okay, there's a couple different ways to do number 2. As a reminder from yesterday, please listen. What goes in the box? Just your answer. Okay, create an expression that represents the nth term of this sequence. Now, does it say we have to use explicit or recursive? You use whatever one makes more sense to you. Okay, so here we go. Now, again, it's up to you on how you choose to do this. Here's what I'm thinking personally. I want to first find out what is the common difference here going from one number to the next. So can you figure that out for me? Hands up when you have an answer. Okay, what do you have, Kev? Kevin, does it continue on? So if you take 58 plus 21, you get 59 or 79. Okay, so here we go. Everybody write down common difference is your 21. I'm going to make over here, I'm going to make a 2. I'm going to cross this out. I'm going to make a 2 and a 1. Can you please figure out with your partner in 20 seconds, don't say it out loud for the whole class, just to your partner, what does 2 correspond with and what does 1 correspond with in this sequence? Okay, are you ready? I want you to come up with 2 acceptable answers. Go just like this. I want the first one to be explicit and the second one to be recursive. Now, in this problem, would you have to write 2? We're just doing for practice, okay? So with your partner, you have 1 minute. I want you to come up with an explicit and a recursive. Does anyone have questions for me about running an explicit or recursive formula given the following information? Okay, I think number 23 is a problem where the math itself is not very difficult, but the way it words it is very difficult. Hector, work with the two behind you. Sebastian, you'll work with your partner now. One person reads it, come up with an answer. If you can't get an answer, don't just guess, because we will go over it later. Ready, get set, begin. Make a little table out. So I personally, I'm a visual learner, so let's start with actually drawing this. So I'm going to start with 4 rectangles. Do you agree when we're starting this thing on day 1, how many rectangles does she contain? Okay, so here's the day, and here's the number of rectangles. So day 1, she has 4. Now she cuts each of them in half. How many does she have on day 2? Day 2, she has 8. Okay, she cuts each one of those in half, and now on day 3 she has, okay, let's stop. Let's look at the pattern. How do I go from 4 to 8? I'm doubling it. So by the way, this is an example of, this is not going to be arithmetic, this is geometric, because instead of adding a specific number, we're multiplying by a specific number. Times 2, 8. Times 2, 16. Times 2, 32. Okay, now let's look over here. I'm going to read it once again. She has 4 rectangles. One day she cuts the rectangles in half, so she has twice as many rectangles. Each day after that, she cuts the rectangles in half. Which formula shows the relationship between the number of rectangles she has and the number of rectangles she had the previous day? I personally think it's easiest just to plug in numbers. So it says, let's only calculate this after day 1. Because x represents what here? This is the number of rectangles, and this is our previous. Okay, so you ready? I want you to look here and go, which one of these do I think represents what's happening? So this represents what you had the previous day. So I start with 4. What do I have to go up to? 8. So if this is 4, if I multiply by 4 and add 2, do I end up with 8? If this is 4, if I multiply by 2 and add 4, do I end up with 8? If this is 4, it's the previous day. If I multiply by 4 and add 4, do I get 8? If this is 4, if I multiply by 2, do I get 8? Yeah, let's try the next one. If this is 8, it's your previous day. If this is 8, if I multiply by 2, do I get 16? If this is 16, if I multiply by 2, do I get 32? There's your correct answer. Okay, this is a tough one. You ready? Whoever's shorter between you and your partner has 30 seconds to explain this how they understand it best. Ready? Get set, go. Back up here. So I assigned you for this class, I believe I asked you to do 24 and 25, maybe even 26. So let me go over them just in case, one, you didn't understand it, you want to check your work, or maybe you didn't even have a chance to attempt it. So the first thing I'm going to do, if you can be quiet, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the cube x into a y. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to switch the x and the y. And now I'm going to isolate the y. So I'm going to start by adding this to the opposite side. So I have x plus 7/3 equals 4/9. Now how do I get rid of the 4/9? I multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Common mistake is people think reciprocal means not only flip it, they think it means change the sign. It's not true. We're only going to flip. When you cancel out the 4s and the 9s, do they just disappear? Really, they turn into what number? Okay, so I have 9 times x over 4. And then I have 9 times 63 over 12. So 9 times 7 is 63 over 12. I'm going to come back to that in just 1 second here. And I want to illustrate this. It says let me go back here. Create an equation for p of x. So we're going to call this p of x because it says p of x is going to be the inverse of what this is. This is the difficult wording. So could they have counted this wrong if you put q of x with a little -1? Yeah, they possibly could have. Because it says make a new equation and we're going to call it p of x. And it's the inverse of this. So we're going to make this a p of x. Now we need to reduce. If you don't know this and you're not good with fractions, take 9 divided by 4, hit math, fraction, enter, enter. It does not reduce, I'm good to go. Now let's take 63 divided by 12, math, fraction, enter, enter. We do need to reduce it, so here's my final answer. P of x equals 9/4 x plus 21 over 4. This is your final answer. There may be a little confusion. Why am I not marking this as q with a little -1 as the inverse? Talk to your partner. Whoever is taller has 10 seconds to explain why we're using p of x instead. If they would have said, hey, this is q of x, come up with the inverse, then we would have put q with a little -1. But it specifically says create an equation called p of x, and that's just going to be the inverse of q of x. Okay, moving on here. We're going to come up with explicit. Remember, the general formula for explicit looks like this. Confusion in the past is students have asked me, how do I know when it's a plus d or a minus d? 3 seconds, turn to your partner. How do you know it's a plus d or minus d? If d is a positive number, plus d. If d is a negative number, minus d. Okay, here we go. I'm going to take the second term and I'm going to subtract it from the first term. -11 over 6. And I'm going to subtract in parentheses, 5 divided by 6. I'm going to turn it back into a fraction. So I believe to go from one number to the next, I am subtracting 8/3. So let's check to see, is that true? 5 divided by 6, subtract 8/3, turn it back in. Hey, it works. Subtract 8/3, turn it back into fraction, and it continues to work. Okay, so here we go. I know my common difference is going to be a -8/3, and I know the first number in the sequence is 5/6. So I'm going to distribute here. I'm going to come way over here and do the work. I have a of n equals 5/6 minus 8/3 n, a negative times a negative is a positive, plus 8/3. Now I need to combine like terms. I'm going to use the calculator to do that. I'm going to combine 5/6 plus 8/3. In parentheses, 5 divided by 6 plus 8 divided by 3. Could you leave it as a decimal? Absolutely. I'm going to turn it back into a fraction, but you could leave it as a decimal. So I have a of n equals -8/3 n plus 7/2. If it's a finite decimal, it means a decimal that stops, like 3.5. You can definitely leave it as a decimal. If it's an ongoing decimal like 9.22222, then you want to turn it back into a fraction. I know not everybody has had a chance to do 26 or understands 26, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to get the answer, and then we're going to go over it. Begin. Okay, who can share with me a way to get the answer? And you can do it in like 20 seconds or less. Hands up high. We have a way. Eddie, I know you have a way. What did you do? Okay, I'll give you 40 seconds. What did you do, Eddie?
So I plugged in N to like the possible answer and see which one gave me the A of N.
So what I just heard Eddie say is, like, for instance, he's going to plug in 1 for n. He chose one of the options, and he wants to get a final answer of negative 16. Is that correct, Eddie? So here we go, guys. Ready? Some of this we can just do in our head. So I'm plugging in 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 squared is 0. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Is 0 minus 16 negative 16? Yes. This could be the answer, but we have to try the next ones. Let's try 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Try it again. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 squared is 64. What is 9 minus 64? It's not negative 24. Do you guys agree? Okay, here's our next one. Plug in 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Plug in 1 again. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Okay, I still have a negative 16. Good to go so far. Plugging in 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. Does this give you a negative 24? Okay, with your partner, please do C and D to get the correct answer while I do it at the same time. Bless you. Sorry, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 is 36. That doesn't work. Okay. 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 squared is 0. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Okay, that works. 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 squared is 25. That works. And we'd keep trying them if we had more than one option that was working. Does everybody understand how to come up with an answer of D as in dog? Does anybody want me to explain my reasoning? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, taking this like a practice exam problem. This is like what we started with at the beginning of class. You have, let's say, 75 seconds to complete 27. Begin. You may work with your partner. Minimum value of 0. So this is as low as it'll go. Has an x intercept of 5. Y intercept of 5. We're only going to graph this from 2 to 8. So I can see, by the way, my slope going to the right is going to be up 1 over 1. I only want to go from 2 to 8. So here's 2, closed circle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. to check your answer with mine? I believe a common mistake here will be that students do not apply the domain that's given, which means we can't graph all the way up to where we see a y-intercept because it says to graph only on the domain from x equals 2 to x equals 8. Can I have a thumbs up or thumbs down just so I know are you understanding this problem? Okay, flip to the back side, please. This is easier than you think, but it does take some thought process. Now, here's something to consider. Are you ready? This is also one of the problems from the sample AZ merit test. When I first figured out the problem before I looked at the answer, I was like, there could be more than one answer, and that's true. There's two answers that I can come up with that would both work. It says, what is the value? So just know that there's two. You only have to state one. With your partner, because we have enough time, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to see what you can do. Then I'm going to go over this with you. Okay, ready? Don't stop in those 2 minutes, even if it's difficult. Do everything you know how. Go. Could you figure out A sub 1? Could you figure out B sub 1? Do that. You know A sub 6. You know B sub 6. Figure out how do you go all the way down to figure out A sub 1 and B sub 1. Common difference, I'm adding 4, adding 4, adding 4, adding 4. So now I'm going to go backward. Subtract 4, 28. Subtract 4, 24. Subtract 4, 20. Subtract 4, 16. Subtract 4, 12. So I know A sub 1 is 12. Okay. Next I'm going to figure out what is B sub 1. Add 3, add 3, add 3. Let's go backwards. Subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3, and subtract 3. For time purposes, can everybody look up here? I know I cut you short about 1 minute. All eyes up here. So I figured out that A sub 1 is 12 and B sub 1 is 15. Can you raise your hands if you were able to do that in the time I provided you? Okay, let's look here. I want to know what is C sub 1. So what choices could you have if we said that C sub 1 is going to be a whole number? It could be 13 or it could be. So that's if C sub 1 is a whole number. It could be 13 or it could be 14. Know that it says what is one value or what is the value. Okay, so what it's saying is, what it should say is it should say that there could be more than one answer and you only have to state one. That's what I think made this question a little more difficult. So it could be 13, it could be 14. You're going to choose one of them. The common difference for C sub n is double that of B sub n. So what is the difference here for B sub n? 3. So if we double it, we get? Okay, so let's write this down. So I have a difference of 6, and I'm going to say C sub 1 is 13. Could you have said C sub 1 is 14? Absolutely. So what is the value of C sub 6? So let's come up with an equation over here, okay? So I'm going to do A sub n equals the first number plus a common difference times n minus 1. Come up with an equation right now. You have 15 seconds. Go. So here's my general equation. It's 7 plus 6n. 7 plus 6n. So we can see if I plug in a 1, 6 times 1 is 6, plus 7 is 13. That's the first number. I don't want to figure out the first number. I want to figure out the... So let's go C sub 6 equals. So let's plug in 6. 6 times 6 is 36. 36 plus 7 is 43. That's my answer. But that's assuming that I let what be C sub 1? 13. If you chose C sub 1 to be 14, you get a slightly different answer. Okay, whoever's shorted between the two of you, please explain to your partner.